Hello everybody, welcome to this Track Malting Company tasting session. With me as always is Paul. Welcome. This is the, it's gonna dump out, but you can see you got your big sack of Track malting. Now, what this video is going to be right now is different than I was originally thinking about, and all of the clips that come after this will be such that I thought I was just going to be doing a tasting on the first Track beer that I made, which I'm calling Track Chinook Pale, Track Pale Chinook, something like that. But I got my second Track beer, which I am bringing to HomebrewCon, that I'm calling Track IPA, and I like it better tasting both of them together for reasons that will become clear at the end when we get to the tasting part. But at first, what you're going to see is all of the clips that I shot on the Track Pale video that was just going to be for that. And then at the end, Paul and I will taste both of the beers, talk about what they say for their marketing speak, descriptions of the malts, and if we think that we're tasting those things, and what we think of the malt in general. So, on to the rest of the clips, and we'll see you at the end. Another brew, another malt experiment. Today we have Track Malting from North Dakota. We have 4 varieties, 20 pounds each, so that's a lot of batches. What I'm gonna do, the first batch, I'm gonna do a single malt, single hop beer with this malt. That's because all winter I've been using, I'm sorry, that is the wrong one. Excuse me. No, all winter I've been using Pilsner. So, what I want to do for the first one is just go back to pale malt, and then I will go back to the Pilsner. I'm just going to use a single hop for each one. I have a Omega Labs yeast strain. I've never used any Omega yeast at all. So, I was at the brew store, I asked for recommendations. Somebody said he thought the New Jersey one would be a good one for what I'm doing with slightly lower attenuation, so that's the one I have. This Track malt is, like I said, out of North Dakota, and they seem to be a family. You got this dude, Stober, Odd Man Out, and I believe this is the grandfather. Probably the grandfather is the one that has the farm, grows the malt, and then the other guys malt it. And what they claim is with their facility they can do extremely high quality control, consistency, but the other thing that they're going for is they want the craft brewer to have a unique flavor to their beer, and they also mention distilled beverages. So they mainly or only, I think, distribute to craft breweries. Chip got some of this malt somehow from them, maybe for chop and brew, but I'm gonna take one for the team and make a couple batches. Let's get brewing. Alright, so a couple things here. Here is the yeast. I'm making a yeast starter. This is what the wort is looking like at this point. And the reason I have a little bit on the stove is I've do this thing where I collect the wort at night, usually Friday night, Saturday night. After the kids are down, you can do this. And I get all the wort in my brew pot, and I put a board on the floor, and I put the brew pot on the board, and I cover it with a bleep ton of blankets, and I leave it. I just let it sit there overnight, and then in the morning, I get up and do the remaining 2 to 3 hours of boiling, chilling, getting it in the fermenter cleanup. So this breaks up my brew day. And if you're a family guy, it takes less time away from the family, which I find to be nice. The other thing is, what I've done a few times and started to get in the habit of doing is I pull off a little bit of wort. If you pull off the first runnings, then you can add a little bit of water. If you need to dilute it, you can take a Brix reading to see what where you're at sugar-wise. And then I'll make my starter, tonight. That's what I'm going to be doing here in a second, and then it'll be the starter's going overnight. The starter's not going for a full 24 hours, but I know a lot of guys just kind of do it the night before. It gets it going, and I don't have to use my DME. I brought it up, but I don't need to use it. So I'll just be making the starter with this. So that's kind of a little trick that I do. I find it works out nice. You're not really taking that much volume out of your wort supply for your beer, and if you're concerned, you can run a little more water through the sparge process. But anyway, that's what I do, and if you've never thought of that or think that's useful, give it a try. Alright, I got the yeast starter made. I thought I would do a quick shot of what it looks like right after pitching, and then maybe I'll look at it again in the morning.
Thank God for healing. You ain't gotta get me lit, I got my own life. Thank God for listening. Listen, you've been trying to build me up my whole life.
Guess that's a Brother Ali song. Local rapper. So yeah, that's what it looks like right now. There was kind of a lot of yeast in there. I haven't used one of these things, but they're said to have a bit more quantity, so I kind of can tell this by looking at it. But anyway, check in tomorrow. Alright guys, a couple interesting things here. I got the beer all in the fermenter ready to go. I thought we would take another look at this yeast starter. It is now, what, 11 a.m. I made this 8 p.m. So, as you can see, it's definitely been fermenting. It's definitely done some activity. So, okay, the interesting things are, I got the volume that I normally want, 5 gallons, just under 5 gallons, but the gravity is a bit lower. I'm really gonna call it 1043, and with 10 pounds of grain, for pretty much all grain that I would use, I would get more like 1050. So, you know, that's 10% or more of a decrease. So I'm gonna put that on the malt, because everything else I did is the same, and if I would have had, you know, like extra volume, then it could be on me. Here is my 5 gallon lip. You can see, like, there's that one. It's right here. You can't really see it, but you know, it's just about 5 gallons, so it's not like I over collected. Here is what it's looking like as far as the color, and probably won't really be able to see this, but it's really only about, there's the 1040, so it's really only about 1043. So, at any rate, we're gonna pitch all this yeast, which at least all that seems to have gone well. I used Chinook today, 1 ounce bittering and 1 ounce flame malt. Just kind of kept it simple. So I'll get this yeast going, and hopefully it'll be fermenting later today. Alright, we're going for the 2-track pale. Now this one has been in the keg for a little over a month. So that one is well carbonated. Look at that, it's right up to the tippity of the toppity. Oh, here, oh, sip it. Alcohol abuse. Alright, so there's that one. Now he's going inside. I have a rare time of having 5 things on tap at the moment. And that just hold it like straight in.
Straight?
Yeah. Or you can tilt it a little bit actually too, now that I think about it. Maybe I should have. Maybe that was ill advice. Sip it. Oh my god, you people.
Yeah.
The carnage. What am I running here?
At least it's not a carpet.
Alright, so set her down here. Now the first one on the right is the single one with only the 2-track pale. The one on the left is with, oh shoot, is it Pils or Pale? I forget. It has a bunch of that, and then it also has a few pounds of what they have as a Munich like malt, as well as the mystery malt that is they call Denhoff, which we'll talk about, and there's 2 pounds of that. So there they are. Okay, we got the beers poured. Now we're gonna taste them. Let's first talk about the 2-track pale. It was 1045 gravity. I think earlier on in the video, I think I said like 1043 or something, but after it settled and I looked at it again, I called it 1045. It got to 1.008. So for this Omega yeast New Jersey Ale, I was told that it was a little bit lower attenuating, and I think that even was in their documentation. You were talking about that earlier, or
Yeah,
weren't you?
I think it's 68 to 72% or 72 to 75.
I haven't
somewhere
like
in there.
tried to figure out how much it went, but I think it attenuated pretty well. And then the other beer that we'll get to was 1070 or 1071 down to 1010, so that also went pretty good. But anyway, this beer has been in the keg for I think a month. Look at that now, isn't that something? You get it, you let it sit there for a second, you get it outside, and it is getting clear now.
It's really clear.
I was gonna say both these beers, like this one I did use gelatin on, and this one is actually kind of clear already, even though it's only been in the keg for a week. But neither of these beers were very clear at first, and I didn't know if that was the yeast or the malt. Now they're getting clear, so whatever. Give it some time. Now, I want to talk about how they describe the Okefenokee Pale malt. That is the malt, the only malt in this beer. Some of the words, and this is what I was going to have you listen to. Our Okefenokee Pale is a sweet, flavorful base malt, perfect for a 100% grain bill. I don't get this. It gives a capital M, meltier characteristic. I actually looked that up. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means meltier like melty, like it's a meltier than a non-melty. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's a name. I don't know if it's meltier. I'm not sure what that means.
Right.
With a slight biscuit-like flavor and a touch of nuttiness. When used in a smash brew, which is what this is, single malt, single hop, it will give it clean golden wort with a rich, one-of-a-kind flavor. So, big talk, right? So, does it deliver? That's what we're here to decide. I would like to hear your thoughts. We were talking a little bit beforehand, but what would you want to say on camera is your summarization of this malt in this scenario?
Well, I don't really agree with the nuttiness at all. I don't get any of that. Biscuit, like maybe a really, really light biscuit.
Okay.
And like
It is golden-ish, I guess.
we were talking off camera, I mean, I don't think this is much too far off from a raw or two-row. I mean, it's different than a raw or two-row. Maybe just a little bit darker in color, maybe, for taste-wise. But it's pretty close.
You know, maybe it's the warm weather. It's like 80-some degrees out here today.
Sure,
Maybe
pretty
it's
nice.
maybe it's the being in the keg for a month. But I like this a lot more than I used to. What I was hinting at earlier about this was just going to be a 2-track pale tasting, but then I wanted to change that up, is that I actually was not really fond of this beer, and I think I did slightly overhop it based on what the gravity was, so it does have a little more bitterness than it needs to, which I'm not a fan of, but that's my own fault. The yield on all these beers, and I made another 2-track, I made my third 2-track beer today, and also the extract yield is definitely lower than I normally get. I used 15 pounds of grain and I got 1060 when normally it'd be 1070 or more. So anyway, I feel like it's, so I compare it to other smash beers I've made with like Barca Pils, which is a great malt. I made like a German Pils with Weyermann Bohemian Pils. These types of malts to me are in another class than this one. But maybe that's an unfair comparison too. I mean, it's a Pils malt. This is a pale malt.
Right.
I would not make a single malt beer with this malt. I feel like it just doesn't have as much of a character, as flavorful of a character as I want. However, now that I don't know what, like I said, if it's,
I think if you
it's
add
getting,
just
I'm getting more used to it, and I'm liking it a little bit more.
I think if you add just a touch of something to it, it could be really nice. Maybe just a little bit of
Well,
something.
specialty grains.
Yeah,
and
something.
that's how most beers
You know.
are anyway. So, all right, let's move on to the IPA, which has been in the keg for a week. And actually, I did use gelatin on this because this is the one that's going to HomebrewCon. So hopefully, some of you watching this video will be able to taste this beer. Also, at the Wednesday night meetup at Insight Brewing, I'm going to bring like 1 or 2 growlers of this beer, and then the rest of the keg that I'll bring to the conference. But this is a whole nother animal. This was a 1070 1 down to 1010. This beer has 10 pounds of their Pils malt, 3 pounds of what they call Dakota M6, which is their Munich malt, and 2 pounds of the Denhoff. And the Denhoff, I think, is the dark horse here. This one, I'm going to read about the Denhoff. It's their first specialty grain, is what they call it. It'll make your beer truly unique with a nutty, roasted, whole grain smell, dark chocolate flavored finish. Also, you get a wort with a pleasant, toasty caramel flavor that is bready and has notes of honey. And they say you could use it up to 50% of the grain bill, which I can't really imagine that, but that's what they say. This beer is hopped like my India Pale Lager, so it's the hop shot for the bittering. 1 ounce of Columbus at 30. There's a hop stand of Warrior, Chinook, Citra, and Amarillo. Some for 30 minutes, some for 15 minutes. So it's got a lot of hop flavor. What do you make of this beer?
This is really enjoyable. Tons of hop flavor. That process you got there, I've had that multiple times.
Yeah, you have.
It's great hop flavor. When you were reading this here, this is interesting to me. I never read this before. I don't get any dark chocolate. None of that.
And that's just the Denhoff, which is 2 pounds.
I don't get the roasted, but I do get some of this caramel and this bready, but not so much honey. But there's kind of this hoppy sweetness or malty sweetness, kind of mid palate. Yeah, this is really nice.
I think this is a really unique beer, and what it reminds me of is I did the video on the Thirsty Pagan Red Pale Ale. They called it a red IPA, but for me it was a pale ale, and it used Ashburn Mild, and it gave a character to the beer that I wouldn't normally put in a pale ale, but it was sort of like, I think of this a light roasty, nutty, toasty caramel, dark chocolate flavored. That's kind of interesting, but just a little bit of a light burnt roasted kind of character in a hoppy beer, which is kind of interesting. And it also, when I made this like Imperial Brown Ale, and I use a lot of brown malt, that is in my mind a similar kind of effect. So I feel like this Denhoff specialty grain that 2-Track has is kind of unique in that way, that it will give you some of these flavor characteristics when used in a in a good ratio. I feel like 2 pounds of it in a 15-pound grain bill, like I wouldn't want any more of that character. I don't think we're picking up on that as much as I feel like I am. But I wouldn't want like more of that character in a beer like this. But it's a nice color. It's definitely, mine's gone, but it's definitely like gives it color. Also with the Dakota M6, which, so we can talk about that for a second. That's they say similar to Munich, crisp, clean, malty, sweet flavor with some biscuit and caramel notes.
Yeah.
So some of these flavors, biscuit, caramel, could also be coming from the M6. But anyway, I think it's interesting. The premise of this video was using artisanal maltster malts, craft maltsters, small scale maltsters, malts. What are they like? Do they make good beers? And I would say that both of these beers are different than beers that I've made with more commonly available,
similar malts,
larger scale, commercially produced malts. So we're in a golden age of yeast right now. There's all kinds of yeast makers. There's going to be more and more, I think, of these craft maltsters out there. Hops are, of course, like always growing. The sky's the limit.
Yeah,
really.
It's a good time to be a home brewer.
That's true. Or a beer drinker. I mean, like commercial brewers are making a lot of these beers too. So yeah, there you go. There's a couple of 2-Track beers. Thank you to 2-Track. Maybe you'll see this video. Maybe Chip shared these malts with me. Maybe he'll hook you up with this video link. Thank you guys for hooking him up, and in turn hooking me up. And I don't know that you watching this video can go get 2-Track necessarily for yourself, but you can probably get some other type of smaller scale malt, you know, one way or another. And like I said, I would imagine that's just going to be a more common thing. Anyway, come to HomebrewCon if you can, or if you're going, I'll see you there. He's going to be there.
Yeah,
I'm going to be there. Hopefully you can try this beer. I know on club night, it's going to be at the Northeast Brewers Alliance
booth by the stage.
Northeast Brewers Alliance booth by the stage. Come and look for the 2-Track IPA. That's what it'll be labeled as. Try it. And as always, thanks for watching. Paul, thanks for coming over. Cheers.
Thanks for sharing.
See you next time.
Yeah.